So you want to know how to create a program. Well, in today's show, we're going to talk about how we take the testing results that we do in testing week at Unity Gym and in the UMS online coaching program, and how we use that data to create a customized program for every individual. Make sure you stick around because there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff coming out of this session. All that and more coming up.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister. I'm one of the co-founders of Unity Gym and co-creators of the UMS, the Unified Movement System, where we turn driven people into superhumans. The way we get such astonishing results with our members is that we've created a program that has a balance between strength and flexibility. If you want to know how we do that, grab one of the free downloads, the Flexibility Blueprint, the Strength Blueprint, or the Nutrition Blueprint. There's a link in the description of this video for all of them, and get started on your journey to superhuman. As always, I'm joined by Phil White, our resident physiotherapist, and just good buddy. How are you, Phil?
Very well. I like that you've got a fresh cut in here. There was a,
look at this.
A haircut emergency. It was at
Yep.
10:45 rush after to get this fresh cut. So I hope everyone's really appreciating that. I know the podcast listeners can't quite experience it, but it is looking fresh.
Well,
So.
I'll tell you and the viewers why I got such a fresh haircut. It's because, drum roll please, this afternoon I am reinitiating our weekly workout videos for YouTube, and we've got some crackers coming. I'm going to be filming 3 middle splits workout videos that are all about end range strength. This is going to be cutting edge stuff if you're not part of our mobility masterclass and you've never seen this stuff before, so it's going to be pretty cool. So I have to look good.
Love it.
Have to look good for the videos.
Yeah, I mean, it is all your videos that are going viral at the moment.
It is.
So
It is. It's all the ones that have me commenting. So commentating. So today, do you even know what we're talking about today?
Absolutely. I've been all over this.
You've been? Okay, awesome. Yeah. So yesterday we spoke about testing at Unity Gym and in the UMS online coaching program. Every 6 weeks we do a testing week. And that testing week tells us a whole bunch of data about imbalances in the body, where there's structural imbalances. Then we use that data to create a customized program. But what I want to talk about today is basically how you put together a basic program. So what do we do when we know that somebody is weaker on the left side than the right side with dumbbell chest pressing? How do we use that information? What do we do? So the first thing we do is, once we find out that somebody has a unilateral imbalance, we always treat a unilateral imbalance, meaning an imbalance from left side to right side or vice versa, as a priority. So when somebody has a real strength discrepancy from one side to the other, or flexibility discrepancy, we look to correct that first, and then we move on to imbalances from agonist and antagonist, meaning opposing muscle groups. So all that aside, we're going to talk today about basically how we put together a really good program that gets amazing results and keeps people moving well, because it seems second nature to us, but when we talk about this stuff to a lot of people still don't understand this and they don't get it. And I guess one of the first things that I'll talk about is the idea of having enough rest period between training the same muscle groups. So the research shows that for optimal results, for optimal growth, optimal recovery time, and to make sure that you don't want to train hard, get a training stimulus that causes growth, but then not train again for another week or two. That's not optimal. But also you don't want to train hard, get a training stimulus to cause growth, but then train the next day trying to do the same thing again. That's not optimal either. So what the research shows is that you actually need to rest between 48 to 72 hours on the same muscle group before you train that again. And that is something that we do in the UMS coaching program. So we do upper body pushing and pulling on Mondays and Thursdays, and we do lower body pushing and pulling on Tuesdays and Fridays. Yeah, anything you want to add to that?
I think when we're talking about optimal, that's kind of optimal for performance, but it's also optimal for avoiding injury. And if you've heard all of our talking before, it's all been, pretty much that for 90% of the injuries that you occur, they come from load management issues. So this is really getting to that heart of that load management issues, and really coming up with a smart program is going to be one of the best ways to injury-proof you going forward into your training.
And I think that's a really important thing to drive home. I know Phil loves driving this home, but I want to take this opportunity. I've been training for a long time now. I'm 42 in a couple of months, and I'm in better shape than I've ever been, despite having a really bad injury last year. I'm still in really, really good shape, and my body's performing really, really well. And the reason why that is because I didn't train this way when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, it was all just about training as hard as I could and trying to, get to that next goal as quick as I could. And I didn't understand how to balance the body. And when I started to learn about it, once I became a professional trainer and I started to go to workshops and seminars and work with, world-class coaches, I started to realize that I actually knew almost nothing about creating a balanced program. And it should be a real priority for anyone that isn't a professional athlete, that doesn't have a goal to win a gold medal or something that is there's so much riding on it that if they get it, they can set themselves up in a way that is not important to me. But if that's you, then fair enough. But let's take that example aside. Anybody else, you should be designing your program with longevity in mind. It shouldn't just be about what can you achieve in a short period of time, because our gym is filled with people that have come to us because they say, look, I'm just so sick and tired of feeling sore and injured all the time, and I want to do something that's going to make me feel better.
Yeah, and that can be, I think one of the enemies of people training well and of physio is human nature. And human nature is that you go for that kind of next shiny thing, and you just want to, you get kind of distracted by, something cool that you want to be able to achieve that you've seen on the internet. So I think
and that's hard, man.
That's
hard.
I totally agree.
That.
It's hard. It's so hard to
still
avoid
hard for
that.
me to avoid that.
Exactly. So going back to the beginning of the year when we talked about goal setting, you really have to try and think big picture about your long term, but then also the steps you take to get there, and then trying to align all of those goals together. So it means that you can explore some of that fun, exciting stuff that keeps you engaged in training, because the best training you can do is the one that you'll actually turn up and do. Mm-hmm. So it's all about figuring out that sort of master plan of where you want to get to, and then the path you get there. And it might not be optimal for getting into there the quickest way possible, but if it's all about staying with it, enjoying it along the way, having the skills to develop your program in line with your goals is so key. So I think it's a really key topic that we're getting into today about finding a meaningful pathway forward with your program that plays into your long-term goals. And I just really recommend people, if you haven't gone back and listened to Yanni talk goals for 9 days, that you give it a go.
Yeah, for sure. And then, this is going down a little bit of a sidetrack here, but I just want to touch on that as well. We're fighting a war at the moment for mental space. When these devices that we've all got now, everyone's got a smartphone, and and I'm as guilty as anybody of it. My thing is, though, I'm trying to be quite disciplined that I consume content and use my time on social media in a way that it propels my business forward and my training forward, rather than just meaningless stuff. But if you just sit on a bus or a train, at least in Sydney, and look up from your phone and just look around, everyone is on their phone, right? So we're fighting this battle where we're trying to categorize the shit that goes in our head into stuff that's useful and stuff that's useless. And a lot of what, touching on what you were saying about, the shiny object things, if you're not aware of this, and if you just consume content without any concern as to what it's doing to your mind and to your focus, then you can so easily get sidetracked. And even though you set a plan for yourself with your training, you can go, oh man, I'm going to go into the gym tomorrow and try that move that I'm not even close to being ready for, but it looks so cool and I want to be able to do it. And it's really important that, when you come up with a program, that you do your very best to just stick to that program, regardless of what new thing pops up in your next mesocycle, in our case being 6 weeks, that would make you think, oh, but I want to try this. Because you wrote that mesocycle, you wrote that plan knowing where you were and knowing where you want it to be. And we all get sidetracked halfway through it.
Totally. It's hard, and we recognize that. And so, today we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the actual how to get this program happening. So hopefully after yesterday you get a bit of an idea of why we do the structural balance testing, and with all the stuff we've been putting out about the process of how to do it, hopefully that's pretty clear now. So what do you do with that information, Rad?
So, well, what I want to talk about before I talk about what you do with that information, because that's very specific to the UMS, what I want to talk about is the most basic level of how to put a program together that makes you more balanced and not less balanced as you get stronger. And I really believe that for me, for what I believe in, I don't like going the bodybuilding way, which is talking about muscle groups, which is saying I'm going to train my chest and my biceps today, or my back and my triceps, or whatever it is, whatever the split that you do. I believe in talking about movement patterns. So we break movement down in our program, split into 3 categories. We have bent arm strength, which is any movement, any upper body movement that involves bending the elbow. If the elbow bends in the movement, it's called a bent arm strength movement. Then we have lower body, and lower body, the primary movements that we do are squat and deadlift, and I'll talk about what they're paired with in a sec. And then we have straight arm scapular strength, and straight arm scapular strength refers to upper body movements where the elbows stay locked out, where the movement occurs from scapular protraction, retraction, elevation, and depression. So that's a split that we really like, and that's called a program split, where we do bent arm strength Monday, lower body Tuesday, straight arm strength Wednesday, bent arm strength Thursday, lower body Friday, straight arm strength Saturday. Now, not everybody has to do that. We have members that say, look, I can only train 3 days a week. No problem. We teach people how to change the split that's specific to them. Some people do the 2 lower body days and 1 bent arm strength day. Some people do the 2 bent arm days and 1 lower body day. Some people do 1 bent arm, 1 lower body, and 1 straight arm. It depends on what you can fit in, but the program can be customized to you depending on how little or how much you can train. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess priorities come into that as well. I imagine with the straight arm is particularly relevant for calisthenics. So if calisthenics is more of your goal, then you probably more heavily weight the straight arm days, and
Absolutely, but you know what? I'd like to touch on that. What I have learned from experience, and what I've seen some of my other friends that are people like Aaron from Origin of Energy that have talked to me about it. If through our own discovery, we have found that bent arm strength has a much greater impact on your overall strength than straight arm strength does. Yeah. So even though my goals are heavily revolved around calisthenics, I now prioritize bent arm strength because I tried prioritizing straight arm strength for a couple of years and it didn't deliver the results that I saw that Richard and Yanni got from going the other way, prioritizing bent arm strength. And they basically did that from a default setting that their goal was more to be as strong as possible with weightlifting, and my goal was very specific to calisthenics. So I do want to clarify that. I love straight arm strength; it has a massive part in the UMS. But I do believe that if you had to cull something and say, what am I going to focus on? I would do bent arm strength over straight arm strength. So you've got that, you've got your goals, you've got your priorities, you've figured out how you're going to do it. Now, the way that you need to write a program is you need to balance pushing and pulling, and this happens in the upper and lower body. If you've heard this pushing and pulling concept, a lot of people have only heard to it as horizontal push and pull and vertical push-pull, but we talk about it in the lower body as well, and I'll explain that in a minute. So with bent arm strength, what it means is we break it down into horizontal pushing and pulling, which means that your arms, if you were standing straight, if I was standing vertically, if I was standing upright, if my arms move away from my body, they're moving horizontally along the ground, and that's a push. And if they're moving towards my body, they're moving horizontally in a pull. And if they go up like this, that's called a vertical push, and then down like this is a vertical pull. So examples of horizontal push and pull would be, in weightlifting, would be a bench press and a bent over row. You might be getting confused here because you think, well, in a bench press, my arms are moving up and down. Yes, they are, but how are they moving in relation to if I was standing upright?
Yeah, I'm talking the anatomical position is standing in this
standing,
position,
that's right. Yeah. So horizontal push and pull, bench press, bent over row, or in calisthenics, push up and a ring row would be examples. Vertical push pull, standing barbell shoulder press would be a vertical push, but also a handstand push up would be a vertical push. Even though you're upside down in one, the arms are still moving vertically above the head, and a pull-up would be a calisthenics movement of a vertical pull, and a lat pull-down would be a weightlifting movement.
So for a dip, for example, would you put that in the vertical push?
That's a really good question, and it's an interesting one. I used to call it as a horizontal push because it trains more of the pecs than it does the deltoids. Yeah. But since I've learnt about gymnastics programming, in gymnastics, at least for the people that I've learnt gymnastics off, so don't tell me, oh, Dimitri from whoever, teaches it this way. I'm sure there's people that teach it differently, but from the person that I've learnt off, they call it a vertical push-pull. And that's because in gymnastics, a perfect dip, you are actually in a vertical position. So your arms are pushing downward in a vertical pattern. So I do call that a vertical push, a dip.
I think this horizontal push-pull idea and the vertical push-pull idea is just such a key concept to understand, because I really find a lot of people who come in to see me and they're like, oh yeah, I don't train in a gym, but I do lots of like body weight stuff from home, and so I do like my upper body stuff, and And I was like, oh yeah, so what is it? And like, I'm doing a push-up challenge at the moment, and I get some burpees in there, and I go down to the park and do some dips, and so it ends up like
it's just push.
It's push. And so I think it's really key to, if you can break it down to these really key to easy to understand terms. You don't need to know your anatomy. You don't need to know what chest and bis and back and tris are.
This muscle.
All you need to think is like, am I pushing something away or am I pulling it towards me?
Yeah.
And that I think can really make it easy to understand just how you're building structural balance into your training, because it's just so many issues come from people spending all of their time in this position on their phone or this position on the computer or this position on the while they're driving, and
you know what's amazing, and sorry, I just got to have a quick shout out. Quack, thanks for tuning in, brother. And yes, my fresh cut is looking good, isn't it? So what's really amazing is that we get so many people that come in here that have compromised shoulders, and they've got shoulder impingement and pain, and they really believe that they need a customized program, that their issues are unique. And just by putting them into the UMS with a balance between pushing and pulling, within a month they're like, oh my God, my shoulders have never felt so good.
Yeah.
Just by creating that balance. And if you want to go for even further proof of this, you can look at somebody that does a really different style of training than us, Sebastian Orup, who's an Australian strength coach. We talk about him all the time on this show because he's got so much skin in the game. He's one of the strongest people in the world. He trains some of the strongest people in the world, or he actually trains the strongest man in the world, Thor Bjornsson. And when you ask him what is his secret to his upper body strength, he says, I do a 1-to-1 ratio of push and pull. Yeah. That's it. When he gives you a one-sentence answer, that's what he says.
Yeah.
He says, I do horizontal pulling as much as I do horizontal pushing.
And I know we're trying to stay away from physio kind of stuff in this show and keep it more strength and flexibility, but I just say that I think that's a really key thing that, people want these specialized programs, and physios I've often given, like, if you've got sort of shoulder pain and maybe it's a rotator cuff dysfunction, then they're like, oh, well, here's a, rotator cuff strengthening exercises. But that totally ignores, like, how the shoulder functions, which it no matter how strong your rotator cuff is, if your shoulders are bent forward and you're not able to rotate your scapulas to lift your arms up over your head, and you're closing down the space and causing your rotator cuff to get have impingement while you're lifting your arm overhead, like no amount of strengthening that muscle will change that movement pattern.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to that balanced program, and so it's so key to.
And these movement patterns that we're talking about here, they're called primal movement patterns. They're the movements that have been identified as, if we go back to caveman times, these are the movements that we must have evolved with, which is called horizontal push-pull, vertical push-pull, squat, lunge, bend, and rotation. And you can put almost anything that a caveman would have had to do into those patterns. You either would have had to lunge down to pick it up, squat down to pick it up, bend down to pick it up, rotate to throw the spear or the rock, or push or pull away from you. So that's why they call it primal movement patterns. And at the most basic level of program design, it's very, very important to include these patterns and to do them as a 1-to-1 ratio. Where a lot of people get it wrong, and what I used to get it wrong was, I would be looking at my body from a muscular perspective, where I would look at myself in the mirror and think, oh, I need to build my chest more, or I need to build these muscles more. I'm going to train those muscles. And that has always delivered really bad results in myself and in anyone that I've seen.
Yeah, the mirror muscles are a common one, where people will just smash the chest muscles, so they'll do, bench press, dumbbell flies, these machine flies, and they'll do their abs and end up just becoming so dysfunctional and can't even lift their arm up over their head because they've just got so much.
So what we can do, we can bring it back to what you said before. How do we use the UMS test results to create a program? So we've got a split, and the split in the UMS doesn't change. We have, as I said, Monday bent arm strength, Tuesday squat and hamstring. So when you talk push and pull, as far as the squat goes, even though there's a bunch of joints that are moving, but we talk about what's going on in the knee. So in the squat, the knee is extending, and in a hamstring curl, the knee is flexing. Okay, so that's like a opposing muscle group movements. Even though the hamstring is used in a squat, and if you want to get really specific about it, but that's we have to include hamstrings and squats somewhere, so we do it there. Then we've got your straight arm scapular strength, and even in the straight arm scapular strength, we do push and pull. So we do planche movements that involve protraction of the scapula and flexion of the shoulder, and we pair it with lever movements that involve depression and retraction of the scapula and extension of the shoulder. So that's a push-pull. And so we've got the split Monday to Saturday. You do your testing week, and then the testing tells you out of a horizontal push-pull, is the bench press weaker than an incline bench press, or vice versa? When you've done dumbbell pressing, was one arm stronger than the other? Is a front squat stronger than a back squat, or stronger than a split squat, which is a unilateral thing? So we get this data that tells us imbalances, and then we use that data to decide on Monday, what version of a horizontal push and pull are you doing? What version of a vertical push-pull are you doing? What version of a squat are you doing? Are you doing a split squat, a unilateral version? So it's a really, really great way to create a customized program for the individual using a split that's been proven with thousands of people to be a very, very good, safe and healthy way to train. And then from there, I feel like that was a mic drop moment because you looked at me like, yeah, I've got nothing to add to that. So. And and then the other thing to talk about there is some people ask us, well, where does calisthenics fit into this? So calisthenics fits in a couple of ways. Number one, it has to fit in your goals. If your goals are calisthenics, then you think about how do you want to train it. So not everybody's goals are calisthenics because it is a challenging journey to go down. For me, calisthenics fits into once a body becomes structurally balanced. So when we do this testing week and we realize that there's nothing that's really out of whack, then we go, okay, let's start pursuing some of these body weight movements that are much more demanding, that have a higher risk of injury, because we now know that the structural imbalances have been taken care of. Anything you want to add to that?
No,
Phil?
mate, you're just kicking goals all over the place.
So this is really cool, because if Phil and I have been friends for 7 or 8 years now, and if you went back 6 years ago, I would have these conversations with Phil, and Phil would kind of politely go, yeah, the research actually shows that, if you do it this way, and I would think, damn it, I thought I had this perfect program, and here's somebody that's got this university education that's telling me, well, the research actually shows this. And we've used those conversations so many times. Phil would come in, train with us and go, like the last one that I remember was when we used to do static stretching in the warm-up. And Phil came up and with a real smile on his face, he said, man, I'm starting to struggle to figure out a better way to train general population than the UMS. The only thing that you might want to consider is that static stretching has been shown to increase risk of injury and weaken you for the workout to come because of blah, 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 blah. And Yanni and me went, damn it, we actually knew that, but we've still got static stretching in the warm-up. So we went back, we completely rejigged the warm-up, and now the warm-up has no static stretching in it. It's all mobility exercises and, body positioning to switch on and strengthen the body.
And while you're strengthening your upper body, push-pull, then you'll be stretching your
the
lower body in a static way. So you're still getting the benefits of stretching, but just trying to optimize it for like performance injury and injury management. And so, it's been, I was thinking about, over the last 8 years of doing my study in a sports science degree and in physiotherapy, and like reflecting on how much time we actually spent learning program design and coaching exercise movement. And I think it's really bugger all, which is just we learn a lot of the science around things and how to research this sort of stuff, but it's just been amazing to have 7 years of learning from these guys and learning from the Australian strength coaches I talked about, and that's where so much of the knowledge has come from. So it's an awesome two-way street, and I think nice.
And that's for many reasons. This is why I love Phil as a physiotherapist, because when people go and see him, he gives them advice coming from a perspective of he understands how to bench press, how to squat, how to deadlift. We don't get people to go to him and they come back and say, I can't move except for, blinking my eyelids for 2 weeks until I learn how to control the motor units in my eye a bit better. That's a joke, of course, but it's a pun at the fact that some exercises that physios get people to do are just ridiculous. Now, listen, guys, we're out of time, so I'm going to give you, because what I say has a little bit of a delay, 30 seconds, so I'm going to give everyone 60 seconds to get any questions in. If anyone has any questions, because we've got a bunch of viewers here, if anyone wants to know anything about the way that we write programs, why do we do it a certain way, please get the question in. Even if you just put I have a question, and so we know not to end the show, and then we'll give you time to write it. So I'm going to give you guys 60 seconds to write that you have a question. Phil, have you got any final thoughts?
I think that we have got to this point now in the program where everyone's really happy with it here, but just say that doesn't mean it won't change in the future, because we're always on the lookout for the best way to do things.
Always.
If you do have any questions being like, I don't understand why this happens like this, and I think it could be better, send that our way and we'll look into it, or explain why we've done it a certain way, because I think it's so key to constantly it's easy to feel like you've figured everything out and you know everything, but I think it's especially with the body where so much is unknown, and science with the human body is really challenging. Like, there's so many variables, there's so many different parameters that have such a huge impact on the research that comes out. So just to say that we're really happy with it where it is now doesn't mean that it
won't change.
It won't still develop in the future.
Yeah. And my final thought is anyone in this group, the reason why we post these videos to the UMS Movement Mastermind and not to the UMS online coaching group, which is where we provide our highest level of coaching because it's people that are subscribed to the program, is that we want to help everyone in this group. And what I want you all to understand is that if you're overwhelmed with your training, if you've got 3 or 4 of our programs and you don't know where to start, or if you've subscribed to the UMS online coaching program and you've got access to all of our programs and you're just completely overwhelmed with it, post something, post a question, because this group is there for us to coach you guys. And, look at the time that we put in here. If somebody posts a good question and says, I'm lost with this, you're going to get a show of me and Phil literally talking you through, coaching you through how to solve your problem. So, we've got almost 1,000 members in this group now. I'm sure that some of you have got some questions, so please put them in there and we'll answer them. I can see Quok's got a question here. So Quok's saying, when you do upper body strength, what lower body stretches do you team it up with? That depends on the goals, brother. So in the UMS program, great question, by the way, but in the UMS program at the gym, we work on, the main gymnastics movements. So we work on pike, front splits, pancake and middle splits, but we also, to a lesser degree, work on internal and external hip rotation. The more and more I train, the more I'm actually moving away from internal hip rotation. I'm starting to really question how important it really is, and how much can you really improve it? And even if you did improve it,
why would you?
What's it going to do for you? But external hip rotation, I still think does still have a place in my training at least. So that's how we do it, man. And I have programs that I write for myself, and I work with somebody that knows more about flexibility for me, so that I can learn things and pass it on to you guys. And it's all just around the goals. So that's how it works. And then from there, as an individual, people will double down on something that they want to work on. So sometimes people, like in the gym, we work on once a week we do pancake, once a week we do front splits, and once a week we do middle splits. And then we teach people to do mobility every day, every other day, to maintain the gains that they've worked on. And then for the upper body, once a week we work on thoracic extension and opening up the pec minor so that we open up the shoulders. And then the other day of the week we do full anterior chain stretching. So we're stretching the arms above the head and letting our legs hang back from the rings, things like that, and also shoulder dislocates and things like that. I hope that answers your question, brother. Anything else you want to add, Phil?
No.
That's it. Tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to keep going down this topic of talking about how to put together a program, how to use the testing results that those of you that are in the UMS online coaching program and Unity Gym are doing this week. Any questions that you have, I'll do a post at the top of the page. I'll pin it as an announcement. Put your questions in there and we will answer them tomorrow for you.
Yeah, and don't forget to hit the like button, just because it's a different like button now.
That's right. Yeah. Really. And check it out on YouTube if you want to. Check out the videos that are going to be coming your way. Probably next week, I'd say they'll be edited about the middle splits on YouTube.
Don't forget, there also is the podcast option, and thank you to all those podcast subscribers. It's exciting to see. We're up to I think nearly 800 listens on the podcast now. So it's getting it's getting there.
We're pretty much a big deal.
So if you have any friends who you think who
tell your friends.
Like if you're training with someone at the gym, or you just have someone who is trying to get into exercise and needs some help along the way, and they can come in here and ask questions and share the podcast, share the videos. Really helps us out. Yeah. Nice one.
Have a good day, guys. See you soon.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.